The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, has said interventions to explore the partial payment of salaries to lecturers in public universities are on the way. Now, he said the executive arm of government insists it is not obligated to pay the lecturers for the period of the academic staff union of universities was on strike. According to him, the move was premised on the government's desire to prevent future disruptive industrial actions in public universities. Well, joining us live to discuss this is Jide Ologun. He's a legal practitioner, and Deji Awobiyide. He is also a legal practitioner and a lecturer at the University of Lagos. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Great. I'm going to start with you, Deji, because you obviously are feeling the same pinch that ASUU is feeling. Now, the first information that we got was that you were paid half salaries, and Nigerians were wondering why that is. But then the speaker is saying that what has happened is purely legal and that you cannot be paid for the time that you did not work, which was one of also the reasons why, you had that long conversation with the government before you went back to school, and of course the court order. So many Nigerians are wondering, I mean, it's a split, audience. Certain Nigerians are saying, well, the reason why you were on strike is because the government did not meet up their end of the bargain. But then there are also those who say, well, you didn't work, why should you get paid? What's your take on this?
Well, my view on it is, I'm a stakeholder in this as well. Ordinarily, what the speaker is saying, as far as the law is concerned, is correct, because the law clearly stipulates that it's the government's discretion. The government shall determine whether or not to pay the money in full. But you will recall that there's precedence for payment of backlog of salaries. So this is the first time where the government is trying to be vindictive in its approach to payment of this backlog of salaries. And if you recall that ASUU indeed took every step that it was required by law to take before it embarked on that indefinite strike. It was the government that dilly-dallied up until this point, and all of this that we've experienced so far is squarely on the shoulders of the government that allowed the strike to drag for this long. And if you recall that even despite the court order and the move to appeal, it took the speaker's intervention to get us back to the classroom. And before that compromise was reached, some concessions were given to ASUU, which enabled the NEC to direct all lecturers to go back to the classroom, only for the government to now decide to what I would call a betrayal of trust, because I'm sure it was based on the assurances given by the speaker that at least some part of the money will be paid that necessitated the strike being called off, only for the Minister of Labour, although he has denied that he gave the directives, but only for the Minister of Labour. The handwriting of the word is very clear that he has his handwriting all over it. It's a vindictive approach by the government. There's no basis beyond the law, because if you look at it from a strictly legal perspective, yes, the government is correct technically, but beyond the law, because this issue is social legal, extends beyond just saying, oh, this is what the law says and you're going to stick by it. The reason for the strike in the first instance was the refusal of government to honor its agreement that it entered in with the lecturers itself. So that's why we are where we are. So for the government to now insist at this point and say, oh well, I'm only going to pay you for the periods for the days you worked, that was prorated payments, is very wrong. And I believe that a lot of Nigerians share my view that the approach by the government is high-handed and is vindictive, and it should be roundly condemned by everybody involved. Because we also have a situation where the president of went on strike for 2 months and they got their back pay. Another body is already on strike. I think the National Research Institute, I don't know the exact name now, but they're still on strike and they're still being paid. So why is it being selectively applied to ASUU? What's the reason that ASUU must be dealt with, or basically ASUU's back must be broken? You also recall that during the course of the strike, it was the same minister that issued a certificate of registration to the CONWA trying to break up ASUU and divide ASUU's ranks. Of course, that move also failed. But Conwa themselves also did not work during this period. And we've heard some information in the media that they are plans to pay Conwa members their full salary. So if that is done, then that clearly tells you that it's nothing but a vendetta, personal vendetta by whoever is involved against all lecturers of other universities.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Before government went to court, there was that issue raised of no work, no pay. So it didn't come out of the blue, did it? I mean, they had been saying it, but when you say, or when you present it as some sort of a vendetta, which might be, but we do not know, the government had said, if you do not go back to work, we will not pay you. Why does this come as a surprise to you, and why does this still stink to you as some sort of vendetta, not just by the federal government, but of course because of the man who is leading the talks, which is the labor minister?
Well, the history of ASUU federal government debacle is quite storied. It's a long history, and at every point in time where the government has pushed ASUU to the point where ASUU's only result is a strike, when parties meet at the round table and eventually compromise and resolve, there has always been back payments of all of these arrears of salary. So yes, the government said we will do this, right? But the government itself is the architect of whatever misfortune that we all endured for the past 8 months. If the government had honored the agreement, we would not be where we are. We wouldn't have called the strike. So it's not coming out of the blues, yes. But is there precedence for government paying backlog of salaries? Absolutely, yes. Is government paying other institutes that are on strike, paying them their full salaries? Yes. Did the government pay resident doctors that were on strike their backlog of salaries? Yes. So why must it be that it's an ASUU that you intend to selectively apply this your no work, no pay policy? And that aside, it goes beyond just a legal perspective. It's social legal, because families and lives are also involved. You want a lecturer to go to a classroom with prorated pay, to go and take a backlog of work that needs to be done. Currently, in the Ministry of Lagos, we are currently running the first semester of the past session, of the current session. So we are still taking those students. We are currently having tests going on. We will still have exams for that particular session. Are we cancelling the session? Of course not. Because if you cancel the session, the students will also suffer for it. Results will not be released. Students will not graduate at when they should graduate. So that work will still be done. But I think that the problem also lies with a lack of understanding of how the university system works. Because I think the minister does not even understand. Rightly so, the Minister of Education has given himself a verdict that he's called himself an F in his tenure as Minister of Education. I think the Minister of Labour also deserves an F. If he's very true to himself, he would assess himself and appraise himself, allow him fail his role as Minister of Labour. It's a total failure.
Okay.
And it took the intervention of the Speaker for us to get back to the classroom. It means that he's failed in his duty as minister.
Let me come to you, Deji Ologun. Is this the first of its kind? I'm talking about the issue of pro rata. And why do you think the federal government, is coming up with this pro rata standard? What do you think they hope to achieve in the future? Do you agree with Deji that this is purely vindictive, or is the government driving at something else here?
In the words of the leader of the House of Representatives, Speaker Gbajabiamila, he said that the government's no work, no pay policy, was premised on preventing moral hazard and discouraging disruptive industrial action. So on the part of the government, it's a way of saying, okay, if we deal with you this time around, it will send a signal to those who may want to embark on industrial action. But under the labor law, industrial action is not prohibited. See, and the International Labour Organization also recognizes it. But when you look at the maximum of no work, no pay, it's drawn from the Trade Dispute Act of 2004, and it's aimed to achieve what Gbajabiamila made reference to. But the law did not take cognizance of workers who, on resumption must go back to deal with the workload left undone for the period of the strike, like my colleague said. And I was going to make reference to the fact that when the resident doctors went on industrial action and the government threatened no work, no pay, eventually the government paid. But what I see here is that obviously the government may not have the money to attend to the request of ASUU. And that is why there was an attempt to break the ranks of ASUU economy. And what happens at this point is to probably instigate ASUU to go back on another strike, which will make ASUU very unpopular. Because right now, when the negotiations were on, the federal government was emphasizing in national interest, considering the interests of the students and the parents. But this time around, like I have said before, we should focus on the fundamentals, because I still don't know how this matter will be resolved, except you pay these lecturers, make them be able to, boost their morale to go back and deliver on education. Because I don't know if we look out of the window to appreciate the effect of education. If you isolate Denmark, for example, which is one of the top brands in education in the world, Denmark has achieved about 99% literacy rate. Denmark offers free education from kindergarten to university. So you may imagine what the lecturers enjoy over there. So there is a reflection here, and you come to perception in public relations that our country is not serious about education. Because when you talk about prioritization, now we are talking about the inability to attend to the demands of ASUU, to revitalize the university system, to fund education. And we have oil thieves that are plundering our resources in trillions of naira for years. We have other areas that we are pumping money into. And it's really, really, really disturbing. And let me ask this simple question. Our president has enjoyed the privilege of going abroad for medical attention. What about if the workers there also are on strike? They are not cared for by the government. What would have happened? Quite a number of them send their children to school abroad. What about if the lecturers there are treated the way lecturers are treated in Nigeria? So, like my colleague said, we have the strict sense of the law that says no work, no pay. But to help the law in its raw form, we have what is called equity. And the purpose of equity is to prevent miscarriage of justice. You see, so are we now saying I wonder what the promises that were made to lead to us returning back to the classroom. And few weeks now, we have this impasse again. And let me go to some of the points in the promise. That in the 2023 budget, I think about 150 billion naira will be made available for the backlog of the end allowances, then about 300 billion to revitalize the education system. But let's profile that budget itself. It's arriving as a deficit budget, about 20.5 trillion naira, out of which the expected revenue is 9 trillion naira. And we may need to borrow 8 trillion naira to support that deficit budget. So how are we going to attend to ASUU's demands in the midst of other demands in the country? This is so you may find yourself in another unfulfilled promise journey. And it's not fair at all when you consider national development. So we need to fundamentally attend to the issues of education. I want to take it beyond industrial action.
I just quickly, sorry, Vice Ologun, let me just come in there quickly because we don't have time. Just to tie it to 2023, because the elections are around the corner. And if policies that our governments are making is one way or the other affecting our education and other aspects of our economy and our walks of life, should we also not prioritize the kinds of people and the policies of these people and their strategies or whatever is in their manifesto or whatever they say they want to give to us, deliver to us as we get ready for the elections? In closing.
I know the manifesto is a written document that tells us what we manifest in the government. But here we are with several promises that have been made to Nigerians that, if fulfilled up to 65%, I think Nigeria may be the fourth richest country in the world right now. So you may have a very beautiful manifesto, but how do you hold the government accountable? And I think that should be the interest. But having said that, let's profile all the candidates, look at the antecedents, look at the future we desire for this country to decide for us who you vote for. And for a Jide Ologun, I look forward to a secured future for Nigeria, not a mortgaged future. This country is blessed exceedingly. We need those who can harness the resources of this nation to create commonwealth or common good. And on that premise, I want to say, let's vote in favor of good governance and, of course, national development.
Thank you. Deji Awobiyide is a legal practitioner. He's a lecturer at the University of Lagos. We're all keeping our fingers crossed and hoping that something good comes out of this. Jide Ologun is a legal practitioner, and always a pleasure to have you gentlemen speak with us.
Thank you. God bless Nigeria.
Thank you. All right, that's the show tonight. We want to thank everybody for being part of the conversation. Don't forget, if you missed this conversation, you can go to our YouTube page, PlusTvAfrica and PlusTvAfrica Lifestyle, and you can watch the whole show again. Go subscribe, go like our pages, and follow all of our conversations. I'm Mary Ann Okon. Don't forget to pick up your PVC. If you registered between January and June, your PVCs are ready. Go pick them up at the INEC offices closest to you. Have a beautiful evening. We'll be back tomorrow talking about the biggest stories in our polity. Have a good evening.